So for my lesson 2 program interview, I have 3 files: the header file integer list, which declares the class and its methods, an implementation file integer list where the class methods are defined, and the main file to use the class to create a list. So we'll start with the header file with its header, the ifndef and define, which helps to prevent the file from causing errors. And we start with the class integer list, declaring the class. And then we have private members, which are hidden from outside of the class. Start with integer list, which is a pointer to an array of integers. We have integer num elements, which stores the size of the list. Bool is valid, integer constant. It checks if an index is valid. Then we have the public members, which are accessible from outside the class. We have integer list integer, which is constructor, and initializes the list with a specified size. Integer list, which is the destructor, cleans up the memory. Void set element sets a value at a specific index. And the get element integer gets the value at the index and returns the integer. And then we close it with the endif, the class with the endif. Then we have the implementation file. We have the header. We have the iOS stream for input output. We have cstdlib for exiting the program when an error happens. We have our header to reference our header, and using namespace std for cout. Then we have our constructor, which initializes the integer list with a size we use. And then start with a list equals new integer size, which makes a new array of size integers. Num elements equals size, saves the size. And then we have a loop that initializes every element to 0. We have a destructor, which cleans up the memory. And the delete bracket list frees the memory. We have an isValidMember function, which checks if the index is valid. So we first check if the index is negative or exceeds the array size. When we take an element, then we check if the index is negative, exceeds the array size. If it's less than 0 or greater than or equal to the num elements, we set the status to false, or else it's true. Then we return the status. Then we set the element. We have the set element member function, which sets the value at the index. And then we check if the index is valid, and or else if there's an error, we exit the program. So the if, we check if the index is valid. The list element equals value, we set the value, else we give the error message and stop the program with this exit failure. And then finally we have the get element member function, which retrieves the value at a given index and checks if it's valid, And same thing, we'll give an error message if not. So right here, if it's valid, we check if the index is valid. And then we return the value at the index. Also, we display an error message and then terminate the program. And then we have our main file. Same headers, similar IO stream and integer list to reference the header using namespace std. We have the main function, and then we have a constant integer size to define the size for the array, the integer list array. And then with integer list numbers, we create an integer list object with the size element. And then we declare a variable for storing the value and for the loops. And then we loop to set each element in the integer list to 9. So the numbers set elements, set element at index x to the value 9. And then we display an asterisk for each element set, which I've already run the program and it'll look like that. And then we display a new line, or put a new line. And then we have another loop to retrieve and display each element in the integer list. So for the value equals numbers get element, we get the value at index x. And then we display the value with a space, and then put a new line after. And then for the number set element, we attempt to set an element at index 50, which is out of the bounds of 20, so it won't work. So it'll display, or it won't display element 50 successfully set, and instead it'll display this message, error invalid subscript. So if we run it, say invalid, but if we put 20, nine. Yeah, it'll say element successfully set.